All right, so I've been shooting videos for years. I've done maybe 500 or 600 at least videos on YouTube, and some of them come out a little better than others. And usually the difference between the ones that come out a little better and the ones that aren't so good is usually because I've done a little bit of extra preparation before I started. Now, at first I did this in my head, and then I started writing it down, and it evolved over the years. So I'm about to shoot another video, and I thought maybe I'd go through that checklist, and then you can understand why it's good to have a checklist in the first place. So let's talk about that right now. Let's roll. All right, so if you've followed my channel, I like to kind of shoot live, although I'm not streaming it live. So everything is kind of done in one take. So I like to have everything kind of ready before I sit down, and then I want to basically feel like I'm hitting one button and going. And of course, ideally, I can almost do that, but there's certain things I always like to get out of the way. One is things like getting the white balance right. Now, for people with a traditional camera, what that usually involves is somewhere in the shot, you take a picture of something that's white. It doesn't matter what it is. I can do that with multiple cameras here. You take that picture, and most cameras have a setting for that. What I've used for many, many years was a little $10 target. You would just aim your camera at it. Which camera am I on? I'm on this camera. So I'd aim my target at this here, and on a Canon, you would take that photograph of it first, and then you would tell the camera you want to set the white balance based on a photo, and it would find the most recent photos and show them to you first. And you say, use that as the white balance. The Lumix has something very similar. Most cameras have that. And if you're lucky enough to have a camera like the ones I'm shooting with now, and I might as well say this right here is a Blackmagic design pocket cinema camera 4K. So that's a camera capable of shooting RAW. And my camera number one, that is a Blackmagic design pocket cinema camera 6K G2, also capable of shooting RAW. And what does RAW mean? It means that I can literally hold up my white object or point to something that's white in the shot and use that in post by just saying make that white. And by making something that's actually white, you have to actually hold it up or use a color card or something like that. But it can automatically adjust all the colors so that if white is white, all other colors are references from that, if that makes sense. So that's one of the things I like to do. So I like to get the colors right first. So that's one of the things on my little checklist. So the second thing I do is I check to see if my sound levels are right. Now, sometimes I actually keep my headset on while I'm recording, but that's an important thing because I've actually recorded videos where I didn't have the sound levels right in an entire day's worth of recording because I used to shoot like 20 or 30 videos in one day when I was shooting my Idea of the Day channel. And if I didn't have my sound levels right, I basically had a whole bad day of video. Everything was ruined at that point. And for what it's worth, if you don't check your sound levels ahead of time, and you could look at little peaking things on your cameras or your recording gear, it's really hard to clean up later if you don't have that right. So you get your sound right, you get your colors right. And then I also check another little thing, make sure you have space on all your memory cards if that's what you're using to record. If you're using a phone, make sure you've made some room to record. So that's also on my list. I also have things here that remind me to turn off notifications on my phones or my computers. It's the last thing you need to do is be in the middle of shooting a video, and if you're doing that and alerts start popping up or phone calls start coming in. So do that. Then I check to see if everything is framed right. In this particular case, I happen to have made this easier for myself by actually getting a remote control for my tripod. And I have a video, I think it's up already, or if it isn't, it's coming up, from a company called Bestcore. That's what I'm using here. That lets me adjust my cameras to make sure I'm framed the way I want to be. Now, of course, if you're always shooting from the same angle, this isn't as important, but having yourself framed in the shot is important. If you kind of want certain things to be in the shot, you do that. So I remind myself through my checklist. I have an actual checklist. At the top of the list, I put the title of the video I'm working on, and then I write down which take I want to keep. So I can, if I shoot more than one version, I could do that. Now I check to see if everything is focused. So I did framing. Now I check focus. Now, of course, if you're self-shooting, you have to have a way of focusing. In my particular case, what I had done for years, of course, the early days, you didn't have cameras that can actually autofocus. And I kind of try to avoid full-time autofocus. So what I would do is put a little target up. This is the target. This target's probably 10 years old, but I put this on like a little stand exactly where I'd be sitting. And I'd focus on that. And then I could stand behind the camera, get the focus right, and turn the autofocus off. So it would not then float in and out while I'm shooting. And I would do likewise with any other cameras. Now, I also happen to be lucky enough in this particular case of having a Blackmagic camera that I can actually focus by hitting a button. So I could do that right here on this camera. And there, it just focused on me. And I could switch to this camera. I have to get myself in the center of the shot and then hit the focus. And now I'm in focus over there. So I have both cameras in focus, or at least let me double check the focus. Always good to double check. All right, so that's in focus. And there's a way to double check that too. So make sure everything is in focus. Also on my list. Do I need anything on my desk as part of the video if I'm trying to do a product review or something like that, to make sure the product is there and everything that I want is there? Then I look for any clips, photos, or other things that I might want to have that I could possibly throw into the shot. And in this case, I might have a graphic, something like this that I want to have turned on. So I got to make sure that that's ready if I need it. Then I say any clips, photos, and I make sure I turn on what I consider my flare for the show, which I didn't turn on this time. And if you look at my videos, sometimes I have things turned on and sometimes I don't. Like here's one little thing that just says on the air, and you only see it in certain angles, right? And then I have, it's nice in a YouTube video to have a little bit of light that's kind of moving in the background. So I always turn on a couple little things. I have these little twinkle lights. Nothing big, just a little bit of this and that. I have a little sign here. It's a little color to the shot, so it knocks stuff over. But so I turn things like that on. I have a little something that sometimes adds a nice little look to the shot. Something there. So I have my little my desk accessories and my background stuff turned on. Now, I then turn to my Mac, which I think I can actually do here through my Mac is number 4. So there, that's actually my iPad. Hey, I might as well go there too. You know what? While we're in there, let's go into the iPad and do something that I should have done before from the iPad, which is I go into an app. This one is called Bluetooth Plus. I've actually done a little video on that once before, and I can put myself back in the shot here. Kind of in the corner, I think. Let me see, how's that working out here? Here I am, I'm up here. So I'm in that app, and I'm going to connect to the one of the cameras here. And what I like to do here is I check my exposure and my white balance, and there's an option here. And by the way, that option isn't always available. I should point that out. By the way, which camera I am? I'm on this one. Hey, it's this camera. So anyhow, and I'm actually looking at the wrong one then. Let me switch this. I can't do that from here. I'm switching to the wrong camera. So I would like to close the app. By the way, I'm closing the app and reopening it for a reason. I have 2 cameras. This one here is the one that's in this shot in the corner, right? And this particular camera, this particular app, it has a multicam mode, as you can see at the top, but I always use single because there's certain functions that don't seem to work, at least not right now, when I'm in that other mode. So here I am. I can adjust my white balance, and I can just hint. I can even set my focus from here by hitting a button, which I did also from the ATEM. But here's the thing I go into that they only have in the iPad version, and even then they only have this feature in the single camera mode. So you can't use this in the multi-camera mode. So you turn on the false color, and here I am. And I'm going to just switch to that camera while this feature's turned on. So here I am, and I can adjust my camera settings based on what I'm looking at. So I can go into here, bring my ISO up. Now, this is, you can see the colors on me are changing. I'm bringing up the ISO quite drastically. Actually, I have an auto exposure somehow turned on. Let me turn it off. So this will make a total mess of this. So I'm going to bring my iris back down to 2.8. And so now, let me show you what that looks like. So I brought my iris down. You can see me in the upper left-hand corner. I brought my iris down to 2.8, which is a nice setting, or maybe I can go 3.0. So I'm on a 3.0 on this camera, and if I show you what that camera looks like now, it's horrendous. It's horrendous. So I'm going to now switch back to the iPad, and as you could see, I'm going to bring this down until I see a lot more green. Green is what I'm shooting for here. The green is a properly exposed skin tone. As a rule of thumb, greens and pinks are kind of in the zone. You don't want it to be all green. You don't want it to be all pink. You want a lot of green, a little bit of pink. So as I'm playing with my exposure here, I'm going to put myself at around 1,000. I have a nice amount of green here. And what is green translating into? I'm going to go back to the app, and I'm going to turn off, at this particular point, the false color. And there I am. I think I'm much better, maybe perhaps than when I started, although I think I was kind of right before. But it's a good practice to check the amount of light you have. Now, sometimes you do that adjustment through your app. Not through your app, through your camera, if you don't always have an app. Sometimes you do that through your camera. And of course, if you have a camera person, they could be doing this behind the camera while your subject is in the shot, but you can't if you're the only shooter. So that's why I love this little app, because I could play with this all day long until I get just the right amount of exposure in the shot. In this case, you could see I am at a 1,000. And if I bring myself up too high, I look washed out on that, and that translates into, with the false color, into this, which is overexposed. And I want to drive this point home one more time. I'm going to bring myself back with the false color turned on and go back to the exposure and bring this down to, let's say, 1250. And now I'm going to bring it back to 1,000. So there's some greens and some pinks here. At 1250, I have a lot of greens, which is good. And some green and pink down here. And I think that kind of adds a little bit more to me to have a little more pink in the shot. So there I am here. And by the way, when I do this, and I'm going to switch off the... There. So there I am. That is based on these settings that you're seeing here. 24 frames per second, f3, 180 shutter, and 1000 ISO. Looks good. I can move on to another camera, do likewise. In this case, I'm just going to have to exit this app. That's because this program, you have to when you run it, you have to close the app entirely, and then you have to launch it again for the second one, because when you do the multicam mode, apparently the multicam mode doesn't give you the ability to do the false color on screen. It's just not there as a choice. Don't know why, but now I could turn that on. I'm on camera number 2. This is the false color here. And just to be clear about this, you don't always make these changes by changing the exposure settings and whatnot. So I'm going to show my screen again, and I'm going to go back down to here where the ISO is also 1000. And I'm going to turn on the false color on the... Am I looking at the correct camera? Yes, I am looking at the correct camera. Oh, the picture-in-picture is not showing that other camera. That's why it's doing this. But if you look at what it looks like here, I'm going to do likewise. I can adjust up or down until I get just the right mix of some greens. That's an 800. 800 actually looks pretty good at the moment on here, which if I turn the false color off with this setting, that's actually not too bad. It's a little darker than I normally shoot, but it's certainly exposed well. And again, to just contrast that, I can bring myself up to 1000, which is also acceptable. And in false color world, there's some greens there. Nice look. It's a good thing to have. So I'm going to turn the false color off. Another thing you could do with an app like this is I could turn on the focus assist. And in this case, when the focus assist is on, I could see exactly what it sees in focus. So in my case, if I move myself in different planes, you can see the glasses have a focus assist showing that that's there. And then basically anything that's in that plane of high contrast is going to get a, I guess I could do medium is a little better. So that's not too bad. When my glasses have a little bit of red in them, it lets me know that the focus is on that plane of depth, that the glasses which are on my face are in focus. So I'm going to turn that focus assist off on the screen there. So that's one of the things I do. So I have this little checklist here. So in addition to that, I make sure that if I'm using, in this case, I have a ATEM switcher. I make sure that all my recording is set up right. I also check to make sure that in the ATEM software, which is also a factor, and that I could do through my, I think that's my Mac is, I don't even know where the Mac is. Mac is my camera number 7. So if I take from my real desktop here and bring this up, you could see as I'm recording, this is what my, of course it doesn't fit. Because the screen resolutions are different. But basically, I can check all my settings that are ATEM centric in there to make sure all those settings are the way they are. So I write down, do I have a title? Did I turn my record quality correct? Did I load up my lower thirds? So the idea here is to have a pre-recording checklist. And what I also like to do is I also have, in addition to that, since I'm essentially going to write down what take this is, and by the way, I think I'm on take 3 because I kind of didn't have things set up right. So I'll write that down so I'll know to look for the third take on my recorded files. And by the way, one of the things I also like to do, and I have a post checklist that I go through. So in addition to this little clipboard, I might as well give you a peek of this. One of the things I do as I'm fanning through my versions, because here's my 3, is I hold this out. Of course, I didn't start on 3. I started on 1. So what I'll do is I'll look through the in DaVinci or Final Cut or whatever program I'm using to edit, and I'll look for my numbers. So I don't use one of those little clappers that people use. I just hold this up, and then when I'm done, I'll move to the next one, and then I'll go on, and I'll keep going, and I'll keep going. And then that's how I keep track of where I am in the shot. I hold up the numbers, I start recording, and hopefully at the end of the day, I've got a video that's worthy of watching. So this is some of the things I do as a independent creator. And one of the other things, by the way, it's a good thing to do, maybe I should put it on my checklist, is if you need to go to the toilet, to do it before you get down. I can't tell you how many times I've sat down to do a recording, and in the middle of recording, I'm like, holy moly, I'm shooting a 10-minute video and I really got to go to the toilet. And I have to stop the recording just to do that. So check that off on your list. Make sure if you have to go, you go. Again, these are little things that do add up to making that right. And if you're doing this, by the way, a lot of these things, yeah, people say they could clean this stuff up afterwards in post and stuff like that. But if you're going to do this, I like to shoot it as though it's live. But if you could do it, reach a point where you have all your preparation in advance, you could do this as a live stream. And that is, to me, a lot of fun. I've only done a handful of live streams, and I definitely am planning to do some live streams in the future. So if you stick around and subscribe, you'll find out about them when they come up. But I love doing this the way I record it, as though it's live. So it does up your game for the potential period where you may, in fact, do something live. And if you've got everything organized in advance, you should be able to go into a live stream with everything already in place. Just a little tip. Thanks for watching.